There are stories that you hear, and then there are stories that follow you long after the video ends. They live in the corners of your mind, in the memories you try to forget, in the silence of your room at night, when every small sound feels louder than it should. Tonight's stories are the kind that don't disappear. They sit with you. They breathe beside you. They remind you that the world is far bigger, far darker, far more mysterious than we like to believe. But hidden inside that darkness are lessons, truths that strengthen the heart, sharpen the mind, and awaken the courage we often forget we carry. So take a deep breath, dim the lights, and let me take you into the world of the unseen. Woven with wisdom that can guide you long after the fear fades, there is a truth we often ignore. The voice inside us, the small whisper of instinct, the sudden pull in the gut, the unexplained heaviness in the air is really wrong. We've been trained to silence it, to rationalize it, to treat it like an inconvenience instead of the warning it is. But the stories you're about to hear will remind you that the inner voice you push away is often the guardian you desperately need. Fear isn't weakness. Fear is a signal, a compass carved into your spirit long before you learned language. If you learn to listen, it can save you from dangers both physical and unseen. There was a girl named Fatima, a bright university student who had always prided herself on being logical, practical, and brave. She moved into a rented room near her campus, a small old space with cracked tiles, faded paint, and an eerie silence that somehow felt thicker than the air outside. But she ignored it. It was cheap, close to school, and she refused to be one of those people who talked about ghosts or bad vibes. The first night passed quietly, but the second night, something strange happened. She woke at exactly 3:12 a.m., heart pounding, as if something had pulled her out of sleep. At first, she thought she was dreaming, until she felt the mattress dip slightly, as if someone invisible had just sat on the edge of her bed. Her breath caught. She whispered Bismillah into the darkness and slowly reached for her phone. But when she turned the screen toward the foot of the bed, nothing was there. Still, the sensation lingered. Someone was watching her. She tried to shake it off as stress. The following night, she woke again, at the same time. This time she heard soft breathing right beside her ear. She froze. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to leave, to fight, to do anything but lie there. Yet she remained still, terrified of what she might see if she turned her head. And then, a whisper, her own name, not loud, not aggressive, but cold. So cold it felt like winter air had seeped into her bones. She ran out of the room and spent the rest of the night on the couch downstairs. Everyone told her it was just imagination. Dreams, night, anxiety. And even though her entire body was telling her otherwise, she convinced herself they were right. She stayed one more week. 1 week too long, because on the 7th night, she woke up not to a whisper, but to the sight of a woman standing beside her bed, wet hair dripping onto the floor. Clothes soaked as if she'd climbed out of a river, skin pale, nearly translucent. The woman didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't move. She only stared with hollow eyes that looked like they had seen things no living person could bear. Fatima screamed and bolted for the door. The next morning, trembling, she confronted her landlord, who finally confessed the truth. The previous tenant, a girl around Fatima's age, had died tragically drowned in a nearby canal. The lesson is clear. Your instincts are not your enemy. They are your shield. They are the voice of every experience you've had, every danger you've sensed, every spiritual warning delivered in a language deeper than words. When something feels wrong, trust it. When your heart whispers, listen. When the air shifts and your spirit tightens, don't ignore it. Survival begins the moment you choose to pay attention. And sometimes, the scariest ghosts are not the ones outside, but the ones inside Usta doubts that convince us to ignore the very signs that could save us. Darkness tests us, but it also reveals what we're made of. There was a security guard in Dubai who worked night shifts in an unfinished building. He often heard footsteps on floors that hadn't been built yet, saw shadowy figures move across empty hallways, and felt cold gusts of air where no windows existed. He thought about quitting 100 times, but every night, he took a deep breath, tightened his grip on his flashlight, and stood his ground. And with time, what once terrified him became a strange kind of strength. He learned he could face fear without breaking, and that lesson stayed with him long after he left that job. Sometimes the darkness isn't there to scare you. Sometimes it's there to show you how powerful you really are. Not all spirits come to harm. In a small village in northern Pakistan, a widow lived with the heavy grief of losing her husband. She felt a presence in her home. Footsteps in the hall, curtains shifting without wind. Her name whispered gently at night. She was terrified at first until one evening, as she sat beneath the old ceiling fan in her living room, she felt a sudden push of air behind her, like someone urging her to move. Startled, she stood up and stepped away. Seconds later, the furnace bolt snapped, and the heavy metal blades came crashing down exactly where she'd been sitting. She believed her late husband's spirit had warned her, protected her. Sometimes what we fear is the very thing guarding us. The past never stays buried. A family in Malaysia moved into a house that held years of unspoken tragedy. At night, they heard weeping inside the walls, soft but heartbreaking, as if someone was begging to be remembered. They later discovered that a woman who once lived there had suffered in silence, hiding her pain from everyone. Her sorrow had soaked into the place like rain into soil. And the family realized that emotional wounds, just like haunted ones, linger until someone has the courage to acknowledge them. Healing begins when truth is faced, not avoided. Courage does not mean you feel nothing. Courage means you feel everything, fear included, and still choose to keep moving. A traveler staying in an old coastal motel woke to the sound of pacing footsteps outside his door. Slow, steady, heavy. When he peeked through the peephole, he saw nothing but shadows. Yet the footsteps continued for hours, as if something invisible was trapped outside his room. He sat on the bed, terrified, but instead of fleeing into the night, he stayed still. He grounded himself. He survived the till morning shift. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply not run. Light can exist even in the most haunted places. A child in India once told his mother that a cold man visited him at night, pointing to a corner of the room. She dismissed it as imagination until the child began refusing to sleep there. One night, she finally checked the spot and discovered exposed wiring behind the wall, sparking silently and ready to ignite a fire. She realized something. Whatever presence her son saw wasn't trying to scare him. It was trying to save him. Even in fear, there can be guidance. Painful experiences often carve the deepest strength. A man who wandered into an abandoned train station on a dare encountered something that would change him forever. Shadows that moved without light, whispers echoing from empty platforms, cold hands brushing against his back. The fear scarred him, but it also forced him to rebuild himself. He sought faith, discipline, self-control, and a deeper connection to life. What nearly broke him ended up transforming him. And finally, you are never truly alone. In the mountains of Turkey, hikers lost during a storm felt unseen hands guiding them toward shelter, hands they couldn't explain, faces they never saw, whether guardian angels, spirits, or something beyond human understanding. Help often arrives when the world feels the darkest. Sometimes, the unseen walks beside you, especially when you cannot walk alone. Life is full of shadows, some terrifying, some protective, some painful, some strangely beautiful. But each one carries a purpose, a lesson, a message meant to shape you into someone braver and stronger than you were yesterday. May your nights be filled with safety. May your instincts stay sharp. And may your heart always find the courage to walk through darkness with faith that you are protected, guided, and never alone. Amin.